Talks with Damon on location in San Francisco, California at the wonderful, fun, and strangely family-friendly Bex Hotel. I'm so happy to be here with Graylin Thornton.
Yes.
You are an educator, inspiration, healer, leatherman.
I haven't
And just
healed
such a-
anybody. Yeah.
Trust me, because we're going to talk, because I think your work, your profile, your contributions to our community have been very healing.
Well,
And have done a lot to make our place, community, a much happier and healthier place.
thank you.
So I am so happy you're here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm good.
This is fun. This is my first bathtub interview.
All the interviews? You've never done one in a naked in a tub?
No.
Wow. What is wrong with this people? Okay, well then I'm glad to be here first.
Well,
Glad I can find first. Graylin, before we get started, I want to ask you, what do you like most about your body?
Oh wow. That's hard.
Why is that difficult?
Because I don't think of my body very much. I know everything I don't like about my body.
I know.
But finding the thing I do like about my body is maybe that I'm hairy.
Yeah.
And I like the gray that's coming in.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, can you show the people? We got gray, some of these, this is bubbles, and then we got some gray hair, gray beard.
Yeah, I like the gray.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, is that what makes that difficult to acknowledge that your body is sexy and that there's lots to like about your body?
Because I look at other people's bodies and I like their bodies, and my body doesn't look like their body, and so then I start thinking, well, I don't like my body, I like that body. So
Do you prefer men who don't have body hair?
No, I prefer men. I prefer men that are natural. If you naturally don't have body hair, then that's great. But I don't like altering it.
Yeah.
I don't like, if you have hair, leave the hair. You could trim it or whatever, but just don't shave it off because that's your hair.
200 episodes. This is what it comes down to. I agree 1,000%.
Yeah.
I wish that message was out there. I think it's more than it used to be. But the manscaping or man-shaming continues. I call it the epidemic.
Well, I've noticed, even when I look at other stations like Chatterbait or stuff, all the guys are shaving their pubes now, and I just don't like it. It just, yeah.
I really don't. Because I'm attracted to it. I think it's God's catnip.
Yes.
So why get rid of it?
Yes. Plus, it holds the smell.
Yeah.
I want a man smell. I want to smell it in the hair.
Absolutely.
Rub my face in it and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Man.
So keep it, people. Keep the hair. Keep the hair. So when you look at other bodies, what do you like about it, or what are you comparing yourself to?
I like natural bodies, guys who look like they just woke up in the morning, went and chopped down a tree, and this is just the way
You're like, okay.
Yeah, like anyone who's physical, I just
But
like.
don't you have that look?
I don't. I just don't think I do.
You don't think you do?
No, I don't. I don't think I
That's
do.
interesting.
Yeah.
So if you did have that look, how would you know?
I'd be jacking off to myself all the time.
That would be a sign.
Yeah.
That would be a sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there ever a time when you did like your body better?
I think about 10 years ago, I went through this whole phase of going to the gym and doing Zumba and taking classes and stuff, and I loved it. I loved doing all that. But my body just couldn't keep up, I started having back problems and knee problems. I'm a former dancer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where some of it comes from, the not ever really appreciating your looks because we were so restricted on our looks. Our bodies had to look a certain way, and I was always, paranoid that I was going to get fired, just all the things.
So you did professional dance?
Oh, yeah. I worked at, you said you lived here in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah.
I worked at Great America when it was Marriott's.
Oh.
And I sort of grew up in the theater there. So that was my introduction to professional dancing.
Wow. And now you are 65.
64 and a half.
64 and a half.
Yes.
Yeah. So 10 years ago, were you able to look at your body and say,
Yeah.
I look good?
I did. I was
Okay.
able to.
10 years from now, what do you think you're going to say when you look on your body today?
Wow, I should look good 20 years ago.
Okay. Well, do you, in your 60s, do you get compliments from others?
I do.
Not that that's the sole be all end all, but do you find people saying, Graylin, you're smoking hot?
Yeah, I do.
Like literally, because you have a scar. You're
Yeah,
smoking hot.
exactly. That's why I smoke these cigars. Like, I'm hot, I'm smoking a cigar.
Yeah.
You know?
So you do get that validated and reflected by
I do.
others.
Usually from guys who they looking for that whole daddy look and everything, and I don't think of myself as having that look because when I was younger, the daddies looked totally different. So
What was the difference?
you know, they looked more. Oh my God, people gonna hate me for this. They looked more Leatherman-y to me. I don't know what that means, but you know, I could look at them and go, "Oh, that's a Leatherman." You know, and I think times have changed over the years, and Leathermen look all kind of different ways. But because I don't look like they did when I was in my 20s and 30s, I feel like I don't have the look. You know.
Wow. Now, would you say that you and Brandon, and some of your colleagues are sort of redefining that look, redefining
Yes.
what it looks like to be a daddy, a leather daddy?
Oh,
too?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you know, Race and I are very close. And I can remember very distinctly years back, he was turning 60, and he said to me, "I'm going to be a hot 60." And that just stuck with me. Like, Race is going to be a hot 60. That means I'm going to be a hot 60.
Yeah. And
So,
64 and a half.
Yeah, 64 and a half. You know, we're just going for it. And, you know, the kids, the younger gays, you know, as long as they give me some attention and go, daddy, 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 we're good.
So you're okay with that? You do
I'm
like
okay
that?
with that.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned then being young, and I thought you had lived here your whole life, but you actually told me you moved to California
When I was
when you were
4.
4.
When I was 4.
From
Birmingham, Alabama.
What do you remember about Birmingham?
I remember the good and the bad. I remember the family unit and being around lots and lots of Black people and having Black holidays and visiting Black families. But I also very, very much remember the other side of it. Um, Having to ride in the back of the bus because you know, as a child, you want to ride in the front. You know, and I remember not being allowed to ride in the front and being upset about that because that's where I wanted to be. I remember swimming pools. Like we had our pool, and there was the white pool,
The
segregated pools, and I didn't understand why we didn't go to that pool, but I knew we didn't go to that pool. So I remember all those things. I think the most vivid memory that affected me the most was when the church was bombed on 16th Street, because my address was 612 16th Street. And I remember that, you know, and so we were down the street. And I was afraid to go to church after that because in my mind, as a child, I thought, well, if I go to church, the church is going to get bombed and I'll be killed. And that lasted for years for me. Just that whole fear of going into a church. So moving to California, you know, it was very different than the South. Still the underlying racism here in California, but you know, I don't think I wouldn't be the man I am today had we stayed in Birmingham, Alabama.
Right. What brought your family to California?
Getting out of Birmingham.
Okay.
But I had relatives already here in California. And so, you know, there's a thing in the South of sending for your people. So I had an aunt here. She sent for us. We sent for others, you know. So eventually most of my family migrated here.
What was it like to move here and have things not be overtly segregated? Not have
confusing
buses and pools.
Confusing. It was confusing, but you know, I tell people this all the time. I don't know if this is sexy or not, but you know, when I grew up in San Mateo was segregated. And so there was literally the Black side of the town, which included Blacks, Tongans, Samoans, all those people. And then there was the white side of town, which consisted of white people and Japanese. And it was divided by a railroad track, literally. And so everyone I saw who wasn't at school was Black, Tongan, or Samoan. I only saw white people and people who were Japanese or Chinese at school. So, you know, there was still this segregation there, but I loved it because I grew up in a Black neighborhood. And you know, for me, that was just the ultimate because I felt safe all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So San Mateo was a good move as a child.
Oh,
That
absolutely.
felt good. And you said though your school was primarily white and Japanese.
Yes.
So you were in a black neighborhood, but at a school where you were not around a lot of other.
Correct.
Were there other black students at all?
Maybe three. I went to a Catholic school, although
Okay.
I wasn't Catholic. My mother felt that that would give me a great education, but my education was I wasn't white, I wasn't Catholic, and I wasn't rich, and that's what I loved.
Wow. What was that like for you?
You know, by the time I was in eighth grade, it was fairly devastating because I don't think I figured it out until the eighth grade. You know, like I went there first through eighth. And then in the eighth grade, I got all the lessons of not being invited to our eighth grade graduation party, actually being uninvited to our eighth grade
What?
graduation party. Oh, yeah, in a Catholic school in San Mateo. Then they took me out of class to tell me that I couldn't come to the eighth grade graduation party because I was black, and the home of the child who the party was going to be held couldn't have black kids in their home because they blamed on the older brothers. The older brothers didn't like black kids, so they took me out of the class to say, "You can't come to the party because we can't protect you." That was the words they used. "We can't protect you."
So what did that feel like?
You know, I felt like it was a lesson learned for me because, for years I was told, like, these kids are not your friends, these white kids in school. But I wanted to believe that they were my friends. And so that taught me you know, not everyone has you in their best interest. And although you've known these people for 8 years, they're going to a party that you weren't invited to. And it really hit me. And there were a number of things that happened in the eighth grade that made me go, wow. And all centered around, me growing up and having the benefits of, moving on to high school. And I didn't have a lot of the benefits that the other kids had. So
what were some of the other things that stood out?
I was an athlete, a very good athlete. And this is one of my favorite things. And it's not very sexy. I thought, but this is good. My track coach, who I loved, Mr. Furr. When
That's sexy.
And he was a pilot for Hughes Air West. I must remember all this. And he took me out of class and said, "I have to tell you that you're not going to get an award this year." And I didn't even know I was up for an award, but he said, "You deserve it. You're not going to get it because your parents cannot donate money to the school." And he was livid. And I found myself trying to calm him down, saying, "No, it's okay. I didn't do this for an award. I appreciate you." And he was much more upset than I was. I think I was definitely upset internally, but, I didn't want to show it. And I had this man who cared so much for me and had taught me so much and stood up for me. And he was really, really upset. And that meant a lot to me that here this track coach was that really had my back. And he was, in fact, he stopped coaching that year. He decided he wasn't doing it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, how did you handle that kind of pain of being disinvited or being told you won't get an award or can't get an award or being singled out like this?
I blame myself for that. I blame myself for believing that I belonged, and to realize that you don't belong after years and years and years. I internalized and I thought, this is your fault. You should have known. I was told, all growing up, like, you have to look out for yourself. In fact, am I talking too much?
No,
Because you got me going on a roll here. And here's another thing that I don't tell people all the time until recently. So in the late 60s, remember the Black Panthers in Oakland?
Mhm.
They opened schools all around the Bay Area, and one was in San Mateo on 2nd Street. And I went there after school with a bunch of our other friends. And to be honest, we went there because they served lunch. So, when you're 10 years old, food is like always on your mind. So we would go there, they would feed us, and all the women working there were white. And I just remember walking into the Black Panther school after school, have these white women with this long blonde hair and, the dresses that they wore back in the 60s. And I just thought it was the coolest thing because it felt real. And it was like, hey, here are these white women who believe in the Black cause. I never saw white men. And then there were a lot of Black men there and then Black women. So to me, it was like, I started to understand white women and the role they play. Then the flip side of that is, you get Karens today and all through history. So there's this real dichotomy of white women and their relationships to Black men, which I find really interesting. But yeah, I went to the Black Panther school after school, and then St. Matthew's, which was my school in the day. So by the time I was in the 8th grade, I understood like I am Black and this is what this means. And these people have known me for years and years and years, and they're not standing by me. But here are these people in this Black Panther school who have embraced me and feeding me and teaching me songs and things. So, I had the best of that world. It was the 60s for me were an enlightening time. I was very young. I was very much into Black Power, very much into protesting. That's when I learned my community activism was during that time period. So I learned everything that I needed to know to build me as a human around the time I was 12 years old.
Were your parents politically active?
Not at all.
So you were just finding this out on your own.
Well, I have godparents, and I love them to death. They're still here with us, and they're both Jewish, and they're both hippies. They're still hippies.
Mm-hmm.
They were hippies then, and they took me to my first concert ever when I was 12 years old. For my 12th birthday, they sent me to the Ike and Tina Turner review.
Oh, wow.
At the Fillmore East, I think it was. Wow. It was one of those little clubs over there. That was my first concert ever. It was like me and adults in the smoky club. The waitress kept bringing me Cokes. Watching the Ike and Tina Turner review just feet away. Because these were little clubs then. They did those big shows. And so, yeah, that was my first thing. And I wanted to be an Ikeette. I mean, what little Black boy doesn't want to be an Ikeette?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you remember about Tina?
The short skirt and the sexual nature of the show. I was 12. And, when you hit 12, you hit that puberty point. And I just remember lots and lots of sex. And I thought Ike was really sexy. Just the whole thing was sexy, especially being so young, and yeah, it was just the whole sexual atmosphere of that is I learned a lot in that one concert. Yeah.
Wow. Were you aware that you were getting excited by Ike or by men at that point?
Absolutely.
You could feel that.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
I know, I didn't understand that I was gay. I knew that I was turned on to men on soap operas, but I thought it was more just because I wanted to be the women. I still hadn't put that together that was a gay thing until I was a little bit older.
Okay, I'm gonna just do a little side, then I'll come back. So soap operas.
Yeah.
I was named after a soap opera character.
Whoa! Who is it?
Some guy named Graylin on a soap opera.
Do you know which one?
I don't. He was a Black character. He was a doctor on whatever soap opera it was. And my parents have always told me this. My grandmother named me. And I met one other Graylin who lives over in Oakland. And he said the exact same thing to me. Like, I was named after a soap opera character. We're like, yeah, wow. That's us.
I have to find out who this is. Okay, so it's 1960. So yeah. There were 15 soaps on daytime television in 1960. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I'm on the case.
So sexually, you asked the
so you were starting to understand, or you understood that when you saw Ike and when you saw men that was exciting.
Oh, absolutely. Because I grew up very sexually, and I don't know if we could say this.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I said San Mateo was segregated, and I was in the Black side of town.
Uh-huh.
Well, I knew everyone because we had gone to kindergarten together. So in kindergarten through, 8th, ninth grade, I saw the same people every day. And we played together, we were out in the streets together, and eventually we all just started having sex together. So I say at about 9, we were already sexual. And I was extremely sexual. By the time I was 12, I was having sex.
You say sexual sex, are we talking penetration?
We were talking, yeah, I'd say by the time I was 12, I had had some penetration.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anal, vaginal?
Both. I had played with boys, so the younger boys played with the older, younger being 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
We played with the boys who were like 10, 11, 12.
Uh-huh.
And, I bonded to them because that's what we did when we were younger. Then when you got a little older, you could be the top. And then at that point, you started having sex with some of the girls too. So it was just all sex. And it was so open that I don't think we even thought about it. It's just what we were doing. Everybody was having sex. It's like the song, the children were all having sex. We were just all having sex. So I was completely sexually liberated. Well, 12, 13, 14. I studied it. I studied sex. I would go to the library and just look at other ways to have sex. It was like a thing with me. I was obsessed with sex. And not really having it, more knowing the experience, looking for new things. I was reading. I was just doing all the things to learn more about sex. I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to explore. I would say I wanted to, as a youngster, I was looking for the dark side. And that was my thing. It's like, I want to know the dark side. I want to know what other people are doing. And maybe the whole Tina Turner experience has something to do with that. I wanted to just open myself up.
Did it bottoming ever hurt?
Not really. More as an adult. No, it was just something we did. I didn't even think about it.
Could you have orgasms then?
No. Not till I think when I was 12, I started, 7th, 8th grade, I was definitely having orgasms. 6th grade, probably. So, yeah.
What was that like to begin to have that experience?
Finally. I was seriously like, finally, I get to do this because I had seen so many pictures and little videos and stuff. Well, not videos, but little movie clips. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do that. And so when I finally was able to do it, I felt like an adult. It was like, okay, now I'm a man. The flip side again was I also realized that I could get someone pregnant.
So you knew that much?
Yeah, I knew that much. Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was the summer between the 7th and the 8th grade, my cousin, who's a little bit younger than me, and his girlfriend had their first child. Mm-hmm. So I was very well aware.
Were you alone when you had your first ejaculation?
Yes. I did it myself, and I worked at it. It's like I was determined to make this thing happen, and it finally did. So yeah.
Did that change any of the dynamics with any of the other kids at all?
Not really, because jacking off was something that we didn't discuss. Sex was something that we were open about, but we all knew each other did it. Yeah. But I wanted to be the man before I let other people know. Like I wanted to just have the whole experience so that I wasn't so virgin-y after that. Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like these were positive experiences.
Oh,
these
absolutely.
were good experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Was anyone in this group, did you ever talk about it later? Or did anyone ever say anything later? Like this wasn't such a great experience for them? Or
no. All of us, we were just all such good friends. And like I said, we've known each other since we were in kindergarten. So at that point, it's like, this is what we do.
And it sounds like this is what's made you a healthy sexual man today.
Absolutely.
These experiences. And I think we don't talk about that enough. Yeah. In this culture anyway, we tend to only talk about childhood sexuality through the lens of trauma.
Right.
We rarely, I do, people in my tub have talked about this, in my therapy office have talked about this, but that childhood exploration can be wonderful. can be
Oh yeah.
a wonderful part of development and evolution and empowerment,
Mhm.
right? Especially, I mean, it's rare that children have someone they can talk to or ask advice. It sounds like, was there anyone who had a question or a concern? Was there anyone you could turn to?
Well, friends. I had lots of friends and lots of people around me. So I never really felt like I was out on my own or anything because, when you're with a group of people who are all doing the same thing and you know that you're all doing the same thing, it takes the stigma away from it.
Yeah.
I had no fear of sex. That was one thing that I understood and knew, and I felt very positive about it. I wanted to be sexual.
And no one was trying to make you feel bad about having sex with boys.
Yeah.
Nobody in the group was doing any of
No.
that. Did you have the words back then as gay or
Not at all.
homosexual or even fag or anything
No.
negative?
Didn't know any of that.
Wow.
So
there wasn't like really a word at the time.
we were just doing it. And we didn't look for words. It was just you be with someone, you do the thing, then you go play or whatever you're going to.
Now, was this the group of people who you were? This was not the group of people you were going to school with.
No,
these were the neighborhood.
Right.
Okay, so school and neighborhood were different.
Very separate. Okay. Very separate. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So when did you start to identify as gay, or when did that seem important to you at any point? Did someone ever say you have to identify or come out or something like that?
No. And I had this conversation too with people. I never came out. And I spoke to a cousin of mine like years ago, and she said, "Yeah, we just kind of knew. It was just a thing." I had girlfriends, up through high school, and I had boyfriends up through high school. But with the boys, it was just sex. Like we get together, we play, we do a thing, and then we go on about our business. The girls were relationships. The boys were not relationships, except the friendships. And so, I really had no words of fag or any of the negative things that went with that because we were all doing it. We had all known each other for years. So as I grew older, the people around me just sort of knew that I was going in another direction and seemed okay with it.
Did they continue to go in that direction, or did they start to pair up? And
they started pairing up in
straight relationships?
Yeah, well, I would say monogamous straight relationships. they were just having sex with the girls, and I was having sex with girls and boys up until college, and then I started having sex with the men, and but it just wasn't ever really a thing for me. It was just I'm having sex or relationship with this person, and that's just what it is.
Wow. So when did you move to the San Francisco area?
When I was 26, 27.
Okay.
I was in a leather club in San Jose called Slug. And part of my job in that club was to come to San Francisco and learn from the people here how to do leather things, contests and events. And so I spent the summer in San Francisco with some of the big name leather people, the Alan Selby's and Mr. Marcus's and all of that day, really learning from them. And that is what I think put me on the trajectory of today, of who I am today, because I had the privilege of learning from a group of men and women who today are legendary. And back then, they were just people that I saw every day.
Wow. Do you remember when you started to learn about AIDS or GRID?
Absolutely. I was a dancer at Great America, and I remember one of the wardrobe people actually saying to me one day, "You have to be careful out there because there's a gay cancer." And my response was, "How does cancer know I'm gay?" And so I didn't really believe this was happening.
Do you remember about when this was?
Let's see. It would have been 82, 83.
Okay.
Around that in the early days. And then when everything broke, I was, so in the summer I worked at Great America as a dancer. In the winter I worked at the Water Garden, which was a bathhouse.
Oh my God. Okay,
So I'm that kid.
Yeah, that was my first bathhouse.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Got
the
it.
Water Garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bathhouse back there.
Yeah.
It turned into a country club after a
Yeah.
while. But back then it was a bathhouse,
Wow.
and I was working there when they closed all the bathhouses. So that one stayed open.
Yeah.
And they transformed it in a whole bit. So I was in the middle of all of that panic and everything, and then I was diagnosed in 1987.
Wow.
So again, I was just on this trajectory of this is what it is to be gay, and I it was a horrifying time period. That was probably the best time period of my life.
How so?
The connections I made and the friendships I made and the things that I learned about responsibility and taking care of each other and growing up. I mean, I had to grow up really quickly because as a 26, 27-year-old, everyone around me was dying. And so I had to step up. There was no choice in that matter. So I grew up really quickly. But the people around me, I learned to love. And yeah, and I still think so. That's how I learned to love men and learn to love what my responsibilities are. I feel like I just been rambling forever here.
So around 82, you started hearing about HIV. When did you start to know people personally?
82.
So
Yeah.
was it coworkers?
Yeah, the first person I knew who actually died was a friend of mine who worked at the Water Garden. We were floor whores. That's what they called the boys who, worked the floor, cleaned the rooms, did the vacuuming, floor whores.
Oh.
And he was the first one to disappear. I guess he went home to live with a family or something like that. And suddenly he wasn't there, and then we started hearing stories. And the next thing I heard was he had passed away, and it happened really quickly. And so, you know, the effect that had on me was, I thought, well, not me. I'm not gonna go that way. So when I was diagnosed, I decided that I was going to do everything in my power to just keep going,
Yeah.
and keep living, and that's what I did.
So what did that feel like to get the diagnosis in 1987?
Um, I remember very well. I was at the office, when they did the blood, they call you in and everything. And I remember the doctor, who was this woman, saying, "Oh, and it was in San Francisco, the San Francisco hospital, saying to me, 'You're very brave.'" Because when she told me, I thought, "Okay, now what do I do?" And that's what I said. Now what do I do? And she says, "Well, you can take care of yourself. There's not a cure. There's this and this." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "You're very brave." And I thought, not really. You just told me what to do. I'm going to do those things. So I didn't have the fear. I just thought, okay, I need to do these things to be okay. And then
What were the things, do you remember, what were the options?
I lived a very healthy life. I started to um, eat very well, exercise, um, sleep. I never did party drugs. So, that whole concept was foreign to me. So I didn't worry about that. The worst I did was pot and alcohol. And I wouldn't say the worst, but those are the things that I did, pot and alcohol. Eventually I stopped at alcohol. So, I had this whole thing in my head as I need to take care of myself. And
So it's like that just kicked, it seemed logical. This doctor said you can take care of yourself doing this, and you just were like, okay, then
that's what I'll do, And then I had enough adults around me too who were looking after me, and I had seen people pass away, and so I thought, well, I will do this, and then if this isn't working, I'll do something else. I knew that there were drugs out there, AZT and all of that, and I was told not to go on that, and I did trials. I did a trial at Stanford, which I still don't know what that medication was, but I had a shot every 2 weeks. So I was just doing all these things. and then working in community and looking after other people. And so my life was immersed in AIDS. And then at 27 years old, I was immersed in all of it.
Did you think you were going to die at some point?
I didn't. And I don't know why I didn't. It didn't enter my mind. I just thought, well, I'm not going to die. I don't know why.
And you said you did try AZT?
I did not.
Did not. Okay. So doctors did not recommend that.
No.
Okay.
No.
When the antiretroviral meds came out in 1996, what were your thoughts about that? There was a lot of hesitation, understandably, about taking them, and they were pretty heavy-duty shit at the time.
Well, I was still on the test at Stanford. So that lasted.
Which was injectables?
Yes.
Okay.
They injected me in the stomach every 2 weeks.
And to this day, you don't know what they were.
I don't know what it was.
Okay.
And the great thing, though, in doing a trial is that they look after you because they have an vested interest in your health.
Right.
They're trying to prove their drug works.
Right.
And so, every cold I got, everything, they were right there, because I had to go in every 2 weeks. They did all my blood work and the whole bit. So they monitored me for years. And I think I was on that drug at least until 1995, 96. I just went to Stanford every 2 weeks. They gave me a shot in the stomach and I went on my way.
But we still don't know today what that was.
No.
Do you think that drug was helping you? That it was
absolutely. Right. If not mentally and emotionally, physically, I think the thing that was the most difficult was knowing that I was on this drug test and no one else was. It took a lot to get on the test because I had to pass all these screenings and everything. And I had friends dying who, couldn't go get this shot. And, to me, it's like, well, if it's working and they're dying, then you should just give them the shot because they're dying. Yeah. And that's not how that works. Yeah. And so that was difficult to me because I wanted to save my friends, but they didn't qualify for this study, and that was a lesson. I didn't understand. I still don't understand why we wait till people die to keep them safe and make drugs safer, but they're dying. I think give them the choice. Do you want to take this risk or do you want this shot? I think people would take the shot.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm just very moved by that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you had been a really vibrant sexual person. And then when you received this diagnosis, how did that affect your sexuality, your identity? Did you feel like you had to? Because I know at the time, this was 87, and there was a lot of mixed information out there. Yes. Some people were saying condoms were safe. Some people were saying they weren't.
Right.
But how did you feel? Did you continue to sexually connect?
I used condoms when necessary, but I was also a person who still had my same sexual connections. So I still had sex with the people that I had already been having sex with, assuming that they were positive, and most were. So I think we grew closer because we could have intimate sex. We could exchange body fluids, at that time period, because no one knew. And people did say, you can't exchange body fluids regardless, but we were. Plus, being a leather man, there are other things that you can do BDSM-wise. I learned a lot about the human body and various concepts about BDSM and how to fulfill yourselves without even coming or coming into someone. So I think as a leather man, we were already there.
Right. So how did you learn? How did you step into and learn about leather?
Well,
and yourself in that.
I was there because, I knew these leather people, especially in San Francisco, San Jose as well, who had been doing this for years and years and years, and I was learning from them. So I continued learning from them, and the more I learned, the more I was able to do, and the more I was able to explore, different parts of my sexuality that didn't even include my dick. You know, it's there's so much more that we can do. So, you know, it just made a lot of sense to me. Like, well, I'm a leather guy anyway.
How do
You
you
know,
define leather?
oh, that's hard. Um, I know because everyone says the same thing, and I don't believe them. They all say, you know, it's something inside, and blah 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 blah.
What
Blah.
do you think?
I think it's something that you learn, that you accept about yourself, and that you continue to grow. I have my first dance teacher who's turning 90 this month. Would always say to me in the class, you know, you never stop learning as a dancer. You always take class. You continue to do that. You're always looking for something new because you always have to stay ahead of the game. And I look at BDSM that way. You never stop. You're always continuing to learn. There's always something else. There's always something new. And that keeps us young. That keeps me young. You know, I keep trying new things. Even at 64, I'm doing new things. You know, who'd have thought?
Wow. So how did you learn? Like, did you walk into a bar? Did somebody invite you to an event?
Oh, okay.
Because you said something in you had always been leather. It had always been there. But
Yes.
how did you identify this community?
So there's another little funny story.
Yeah.
So when I was 16 in San Mateo, there was a one of those little movie theaters, adult movie theaters. I don't know how I found it, but I did because I was looking for things, right? And so I wandered into this movie theater and I started going continuously. You know, at 16, they let me in. I don't know why. And so I saw the story of O, and I think that was the first time I thought, I understand this, you know, because I watched the whole series actually started coming out in the theater. And I would go time after time and time to watch the story of O.
So this was a porn series.
Yes, it was a porn series. And so I identified O was the female slave, and I identified as her. Because, you know, even being Black and the whole slavery thing, but she explained it in the movie of she was giving the man that she loved the best gift that she could. That was herself. And I wanted that. I wanted to love someone so much that I would give them myself and they would appreciate that and know it and value me and love me and all of that because I was this gift. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a gift to someone because that's how I understood love, you know, at that age. So for me, BDSM had a lot to do with love and being owned. So after that movie, so again, doesn't make much sense to me, but a friend of mine's roommate was a leather man and had Drummer magazine on the coffee table. And everybody says this, but it's true. So I started looking at the magazine and thinking the men in this magazine are really, really unattractive. But I like what they're doing. And I want to try these things. So I looked for it and I started to find it. Remember, I went to my first gay parade, Gay Freedom Day parade. I was 20 years old and I saw leather women for the first time. And, you know, I immediately went back to the story of in my head. And these women were just dressed, you know, they had leather skirts and heels and the whole bit. And I went back to school because I was going to San Jose State at the time. And I had a teacher who was a lesbian. And I said to her, I saw these leather women in San Francisco. And she said, yes, I think they're called Sam Wu. There's a leather club here. I think that's how it's pronounced. And so I went looking for them. And by looking for them, I found leather men. And so everything just started to work for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that really reawoken or tapped into an energy, a desire you already had.
Oh, yeah.
That ability to play and connect and give yourself as a slave.
Absolutely.
So did you find someone that you wanted to give yourself to?
I did. He turned me down. Yes.
What did that feel like?
At the time, I felt rejected, but you know, it was a leather man in San Jose, an older leather daddy named Ken. And I remember saying to him one time, "I want you to be my master. I want you to be my sir. I want you to own me." And he said, "You don't know what you're asking. Go away." He said, I want you to explore for a year, and then after a year, come back to me, and we'll talk about it. That's exactly what I did. So I went out and I had all these experiences, and after a year, I said to him, "You're right. I didn't know what I was asking." No, I didn't say these words, but basically, you're right. Now
Well,
I
what did you
understand.
know? What did you not understand about that?
I didn't understand the responsibility of being a boy or a slave or a sub, and I didn't understand the responsibility of the demo. I just knew that I'm going to give you me, and you loved me. I didn't know that all the other things that went around with it. So,
Such as
um,
responsibility.
responsibility, commitment, and not just sexual commitment to following protocols and all of those things. And I don't mean protocols like walking behind someone, but just, showing them that respect and knowing what that meant. And so I had to learn all of those things. And when I realized what they were, then I knew that Ken wasn't the guy for me. And he knew that already, so that kind of left me out in the open and looking and exploring more in relationships.
Did you find someone that wasn't fit for you in this way?
Yeah, eventually. But before then, I mentioned before that I was a young man in the middle of all of these men who would be legends eventually. I love mentioning Alan Selby because I loved him very much. Alan Selby, Mr. Marcus, Vern Stewart, Tony DeVos, Daddy Philip Turner, Daddy Zach Long. I was in the middle of all of these men, and I considered myself their boy. And
So these are people, were they like mentors to you?
mentors,
Were
definitely.
they sexual partners?
Only one of them. One of them I wanted to be, and he turned me down as well.
Like, how could anyone turn you down?
They did. Because
Was he also just not comfortable in that
No,
role, or
no,
was he just not into you?
no, I think that he wanted me to learn a bit more. Because I was a young 27, 28-year-old just excited about life. And that's something that I really cherished. These men wanted me to learn and not really take advantage of me. They could have sexualized me and I would have loved it. It's what I wanted. But I also wanted to learn and I didn't understand that part of it. They had plans for me that I didn't yet know. And I think those plans are where I am today. They wanted me to be something more than a sexual boy for them. They taught me everything that they knew. And even today, I try to, regurgitate all of that information, So yeah, I was with these men and they were just teaching me over years and years and years. There was no internet.
Right.
So you couldn't look anything up. So the way to learn was to be right with them at all times. And I was. I was always in someone's presence, always doing something for one of the big leather daddies in town. Because they were working, they were all involved with AIDS emergency fund and all of these things. So they were doing all the work. And I was basically along for the ride to help. And that's what I did. And that opened up so many possibilities and opportunities for me going forward.
So when we talk about leather in the community, we're not just talking about a practice. We're actually also talking about fundraising and serving.
Yes.
Raising money for AIDS organizations and advocating for.
You had to.
Yeah.
It was part of the. I like to say culture now and not really community because at that time it was a culture. We didn't really know why we did things. Like no one said, this is the way you dress. You just did it because you saw other people do it. So it was all just a culture. And a big part of that culture was taking care of one another. And at that time, funds were needed because the AIDS Emergency Fund had been created by leather people. And we had to fund that. We got no grants. So all the money for the AIDS Emergency Fund came through fundraising. And that's what we had to do. Every day we were thinking about raising money because our friends were dying. So, when your friends are dying and the people that you love are sick, you step up your game. And I think that being a leatherman and playing with people definitely builds those bridges. I often equate it with, the ancient Greek armies that were, at the 300 were basically gay men and their lovers, because the Greeks believed, and very rightly so, if you're fighting to save someone you love's life, you're going to fight harder. And I look at it that way too. These are people that I had sex with and played with, and now their lives were in danger, which meant I had to fight harder because I love these people. So that was the culture. It's like we have sex with people, we play with people, and we fight for them.
And what would that have been like had there been internet? What do you imagine that your life or that the introduction into that culture would have been like if internet existed back then?
I think I wouldn't have had the information that I have. I definitely wouldn't have had the connections because I was learning from these people with them every day. I built a connection with them. I was their boy as far as I was concerned, and I did everything they wanted. But on the internet, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have been there with them every day. The information I got would have been from, who knows where internet information comes from. Just people post things and people believe it. But I was learning from people who were actually there with me every day. And it took years, like I joined my first leather club in 1986. I didn't run for my first title until 1993. That's 7 years of just learning to get there. And I think
Learning what?
Learning how to be part of a culture, how to be part of a community, the responsibilities.
Yeah.
You're responsible to play. You're responsible to the people around you. You're responsible to raise money. You did all of those things. And I don't think I would have learned it that way.
So then in 93, you ran and earned the title of International Mr. Drummer. Yes. How did you, tell me about that experience.
Wow. Okay, so it's kind of twofold. So in San Jose, where I was, I produced the first leather contest there because I had been hanging out with Alan Selby. That was my job. Learn from Alan, come down here and produce a contest. There was a leather daddy boy contest because that's what Alan did. So I produced that contest. Then a couple of years later, we produced the Santa Clara leather contest. And I couldn't run because I was one of the producers. The following year, I wasn't a producer, so I ran for that title. I got first runner-up. And I remember there's a leather man named Sky Renfro. And Sky was a judge. And Sky said to me, this wasn't the title for you to run for. You should run for drummer. Mm-hmm. And so, as first runner-up for that contest, it qualified me to run for Northern California Mr. Drummer, and I ran and I won. And then from there, I ran for the international contest and I won. And
how did that feel?
Oh, I hate saying this. It felt right.
Yeah. Why do you hate to say that?
Because it just sounds weird. I don't know. but the reason it felt right is not why people think. It's because I already knew everything that there was because I had lived this lifestyle for 7 years, which didn't sound long to me then, but now, people running for title after 15 minutes. So, to me, it was right. And, I never had to study because I had lived this thing. I never went out during the time period where people were running for the title. I stayed in my hotel room. I did all the things that I knew I was supposed to do because these people had taught me that. So for me, I did all the things. I went to my interview. I knew most of the judges. There was nothing anyone could say to stop me because I knew all the things. So, it's like, hi. I remember my favorite part of the interview was Michael Bales, who was Daddy Zeus at the time. He ran Zeus Studios. He said to me, if you win this title, you're going to have to do a news spread in Drummer Magazine. I said, yeah, I know. I live in San Francisco. So, and Drummer Magazine is in San Francisco. So I know this. And he said, and do you have a problem with any of that? And I said, No. So I took my clothes off in the interview, just stripped down naked. And and they said, well, I guess you don't have a problem with any of your clothes on. No, I don't. And Michael said to me, you're slick. And I said, thank you, sir. And every time he spoke to me after that, even writing me letters, he would address it as slick.
Slick.
He called me slick for the rest of his life.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, I went into this whole contest thing thinking this is what I'm supposed to do. You know, and that's just the way it was.
Did you find someone to give yourself to as a slave?
Absolutely.
How did that happen?
You know, um, I was this took years for me to make the right decision. I had been in relationships before with people that weren't the right relationship. You know, I had a few daddies. I was in it for the wrong reasons. You know, I wanted the hot guy, and I want the hot daddy like boys do. And I remember Tony DeBlas, who was the creator of the Leather Pride flag, and at that time, you know, it was Rock and Drummer magazine, saying to me, "Don't go for the hot guy."
Don't go.
Don't go for the hot guy.
Okay,
because the hot guy doesn't always have the most experience. And I didn't click to me at that time because, you know, you always want the hot guy. And so after having some relationships fail with the hot guy, I met a man who was actually hot, by the way, but who was so different than the others. And he wanted me as me. You know, he knew who Graylin Thornton was. He knew that I had a title. He knew all these things. He knew that I was a fucking mess because at that time I was a mess. And
have you a mess?
I think I had grown up fast, and I did. I grew up fast, and I was burnt out. I was burnt out living in San Francisco. I was unhappy. I wasn't managing finances well. Just all the things, and I felt that my life was out of control. And I wanted to give my life to someone, not necessarily myself, but like fix me, you know, make me do the things because I wasn't doing the things on my own. No, I wasn't paying my parking tickets and I wasn't building my 401k. I wasn't doing the life things. But you know, I was going to the bar, I was going to blow buddies, I was doing the fun things. And I needed someone to make me do the life things. And here was a man who would make me do the life things, and he did.
So about how old were you when you entered in?
Oh, it was 2 years before 9/11. So that would have been 1999. That was the year I entered that relationship with him. Yeah. It was I was at a 7-day play party called Inferno. And he was there. And I remember a friend of mine saying, God, look at that hot daddy over there. And me being like, you know, he was really tall. And so, you know, we played and did a scene together. And after that scene, he put a collar on me and said, you're going to be my slave. And it was just for the weekend. And after that weekend, I asked him if I could keep the collar, and he said yes. So I wore it home, wore it on the plane. And after a while, the relationship just blossomed and bloomed.
Where did he live?
He lived in San Diego, and I lived here in San Francisco, and I moved.
To San Diego? Wow.
I moved to San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right after 9/11, because at 9/11, I was at Inferno again the following 2 years. And so it happened, and I had to drive home to San Francisco. The event was in Michigan. So we drove from Michigan to San Francisco. And after I got here, he said to me, if you want, you can move to San Diego. And me and my boyfriend at the time moved to San Diego.
Okay, so you found the person to give yourself to as a slave, and you also had a boyfriend at the time.
I did.
And you both moved to San Diego.
We both moved to San Diego.
Did you all live together?
No, me and my boyfriend lived together. My master at the time lived with his husband. And it was about a block or no, 6 blocks away. So, you know, I would go over there and do my slave thing, and then
Like
I
what?
got home. Um, whenever I was in his house, I was naked. So I would be naked. I would help him around the house. We played. We had a really, really, really great relationship because he was funny and fun and all those things. He wasn't your typical "I'm your mother daddy" sort of guy, which pissed off other people because other people wanted him to be like this stereotypical leather daddy. He wasn't, and I wasn't a stereotypical slave. So we gelled. We had a lot of fun and we could laugh and we could do these things, which pissed off other people because they felt like that's not a real master slave relationship. But
What does it matter?
I know. I mean, but you know how people are.
Do other people's judgments or shoulds ever bug you?
No.
Okay.
That's the thing,
I was like, something that brings you pleasure, something that's meaningful for you,
Yeah.
that people got to criticize.
Of course people do.
Now, we touched on earlier some of the dynamics as a black man of being a slave.
Uh-huh.
When people ask you about that, do you ever get criticized?
Oh,
for
absolutely.
that? So what do you say to that? Do they say what you shouldn't be in a slave role as a black man in America?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Especially other black men.
Yeah.
Other black men really have problems with it. But the issue was I learned it from a very different point of view. I learned it from a movie, about a white woman. And so being a black man didn't equate to slavery for me because I saw it as me giving someone myself and them loving me in return and taking care of me. And it would be this equal dynamic when I wasn't sold as a slave, I wasn't kidnapped, I wasn't brutalized. So I didn't equate that sort of trauma with my experience, and they didn't make sense to me. So when people would criticize me, I think, well, that doesn't make any sense because that's not who I am, and that's not what was happening here. So the criticism didn't really bother me because I knew that they didn't understand, and I was very happy. So that was my issue. I'm happy or not. Maybe if you were fucking, you'd be happier too.
Right. I mean, usually people who are doing the criticizing and the shooting are the ones who are not having a lot of play.
Exactly.
Or empowerment.
Exactly.
Are you comfortable?
I'm so comfortable.
Oh, good. Okay.
I love that.
Good. Oh, I was totally gonna ask that, and now I just totally blanked on what the next question was. So you made this work. Your boyfriend, your master, his husband.
Yes.
This was an ideal arrangement.
Yes.
And I think people might be surprised because I think when people think about master slave, they think about people who are romantically together,
right?
Maybe living together, having sex, in a primary relationship kind of way. You're describing a very different experience.
Oh, definitely was very different. No, I don't know if polyamory was, if we had that word at that time. I'm not sure we did, but it wasn't something that I was thinking about. I met two Leathermen who were married. His husband had his own slave. Then my master then had his own slave. My boyfriend at the time was very open to all of it. We had an open relationship. So yeah, it was just all working.
Wow. Did your master have other slaves?
No. He did have another boy, a boy at one point, but that was okay with me.
And did he ever ask you to do something you didn't want to do?
Yeah. Once he told me I couldn't come to the next time I saw him. And I did anyway, and I told him, and I was punished and the whole bit. And
was he upset?
Oh, he was upset, but he played it off, but he was definitely upset. But his punishment was when I came to see him the following week, then we played and played and played, and I wasn't allowed to come. And I wasn't caged. So, I just had this whole desire, I'm getting fucked, I'm getting beat, I'm doing all the things, and I can't come, and that was my punishment.
Okay. Was that a bad punishment?
It's harder than you think. When you're ready to come, you want to come, and then knowing that you can't, and you can't, it was a lot.
Because if you had, what would have happened?
Well, he was playing with me, so he wasn't going to allow it to happen. But I knew it was a punishment, so I wasn't going to do it.
Okay.
You know, I love boundaries.
Mhm.
You know, I love rules. I love boundaries. I love knowing my place, where I'm supposed to be, what I can and can't do. And if I do something that I can't do, I want to know that there's going to be repercussions for that. You know, I don't want to. Part of me knowing I was out of control and needed someone to step in and take care of me. I know that as well when it comes to rules and boundaries. I want to know what they are.
So it's interesting because a lot of your life you've described is sort of pushing against boundaries and being free of labels, free of shoulds, free of, just following your own voice and your
Yes.
own guide, your own
Yes.
path. And then you're also saying that you do like rules and boundaries and then punishment if the boundaries sort of like Law and Order.
Yeah,
There's logic to it.
absolutely. And then still, I would push against the boundaries.
Uh-huh.
You know, I want them there, and I want to push against them.
So you like pushing against them, but in a master-slave relationship, you do respect the boundaries.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
But
if the boundaries are there, you follow them.
yes, they're there. I follow them, and I want to see how much I can do against that fence there, against that boundary. Where
How far you can go?
No, children do the same thing.
Oh, I still do it
You
today.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in my 50s. I'm still doing it. Hence the show.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
don't touch me. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I touch you.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Okay. The leather community, depending on where it is in the US, sometimes does get pushback for being more of a white space or less people of color. Have you found that to be your experience?
Absolutely. You know, especially growing up in leather, um, in the Bay Area, I could easily say there were this maybe 6 or 7 Black guys who were leather men, and most of them have passed away at this point. But we all knew who each other were. And so I think being in the Bay Area, we knew that there were few of us, but we also knew that we were very strong. We also knew that we supported each other, whether we liked each other or not. We all knew that we were Black, and this is where we were. So we were very well aware of the lack of melatonin in the leather community. And it didn't bother us. Well, just speaking for myself, it didn't bother me because we saw it as part of our own journey. You know, me being Black and the Leatherman means I have a very different perspective, but I still want to do the same things that all Leathermen do. You know, I want a master slave relationship. I want to flog and do those things when I want to. I want to be flogged. I want everything. I would always say, you know, why are the white Leathermen the only ones who can do this? You know, I want those experiences as well, and I'm going to have them. You know, me being Black doesn't mean that I can't do those things too.
Mm-hmm.
So I push that way as well. And I love it when other men of color are involved in exploring as well. Um, I think that there needs to be a hard road for that. You know, I get from white people all the time, how do we make more Black people feel welcome? How do we do this? It's like, well, don't be a fucking dick and we will feel welcome. You know, no one wants a whole red carpet rolled out and trumpets, and that's not it. If I walk into your bar, say hi. That's all you gotta do. You know?
What about, do you ever feel it goes the other way, where you're objectified or idealized for being a Black man?
Oh,
or fetishized?
oh yeah, fetishized as well.
How do you feel about that when that's happening?
It depends on whether or not I want to be fetishized at that time.
Okay.
You know, because I fetishize white men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think as long as we all know that that's what we're doing, then not only good, not only fine, but I think that's part of the journey. It's like I can tap into my Blackness, you can tap into your whiteness, and we can find something that works for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Those things. I don't want to pretend I'm not Black because, you know, that's not reality. Reality is I'm Black. And if we're going to play, you're going to play with a Black man and everything that has to do with it. So get ready. you know. And if I'm bringing my blackness into that play, it's in the play, and we're gonna make that work, and it's gonna be a hell of a good time.
Well said. Okay. Okay. Do you feel comfortable if it doesn't feel good, if it feels like an unwelcomed objectification?
I've
How
had that
would you-
happen once, and I stopped it. You know, I'm comfortable enough and experienced enough to know when things are happening that don't quite jive with me, and I'm okay with stopping scenes. You know, if and I'm okay with morphing them into other scenes. I'm fluid when I play. So if something's not right, even if it's racial, then if I want, I can find something to make it work. I'll figure that out. You know, I think that's part of being a leatherman too, is being fluid enough and open enough to make it work.
Wow. Now you mentioned earlier you're still learning. You're still
Oh,
learning
yeah.
today. What are you still learning today?
I'm learning to be more open and accepting of ideas that I wasn't open to before.
Like what?
Um, Playing with gender. You know, it was I could say only till recently where I could look at a man in some lace and go, wow, that is really sexy. It's a sexy man and he's wearing some lace and I want to fuck him. You know, without thinking, oh my God, he's feminizing it. It's just like, okay, that is really fucking hot. You know? So that, making scenes bigger than just the flogging. I learned this from the pansexual community because I started attending more pansexual parties. Because I was invited to one and went and thought, ooh, this is fun. But what I learned is they look at everything through fantasy, where gay men don't, because we're having the sex. But straight people, for them to do BDSM or any of those things, it takes more of a fantasy feel for them because that's how they can allow it to happen. So I look at things more as a fantasy now, and a scene can involve props, cigars, um, the location, costumes. We do costumes now, and just build on the scene to make it so much more than it is. So it's a complete fantasy scene now that I build into my BDSM. And it makes it so much more of an experience, a complete experience, instead, you know, going into a dungeon, doing a flogging, having some crudité and leaving. You know, it's like that's what
Don't forget the crudité.
you know, well, you know, it costs $20 to get to the party, so you're gonna have your crudité.
Yeah.
You know, give me that goddamn carrot. You know, I paid for that. So now I look at the whole scene like, how can I make this an entire experience and not just going out and being on a cross and beating and leaving? You know, I want it to be a complete scene of beginning, a middle, and an end. That's new for me.
So that's still learning. You're still learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's so great. I love hearing at all ages that we're learning. This is not a done deal. Life can be very stagnating and boring. We
Right.
just say, well, I know everything now, or I've done everything now, and that's the way it is.
Oh yeah.
We still want to play.
Yeah. I play with I call him my little fucker. He's not a boy, he's not a slave, not really a sub, but he's my little fucker. And he said to me one day, sir, you're in a rut. And you know, most doms hearing that would just be offended. How could you say that? And I thought, how do I get out of this rut? Am I in a rut? And I realized, yeah, I'm doing the same thing every time we play. And that's fucking bored. I'm bored with this, to be honest, you know? So just hearing that made me think there's so much more I could be doing. I don't have to do the same thing. And I started, you know, I go to other parties and I look at people and I think they do the same thing every single time. I can tell they're going to walk in here, they're going to line up these floggers, they're going to use the same flogger in the same order, they're going to do the scene, they're going to film all manly, they're going to walk out. And I don't want to do that. I want an element of surprise. I want some excitement. I want all those things. So yeah, I'm learning, and then I'm learning what more I can do every single time. Even from friends. I look at what they're doing. I think, okay, that's cool. Let's try that. Me and my friends, we sit around all the time, Race and Christopher and those guys, and we just talk things. And we all get ideas like, Race said to me, you should try this. And I thought, that's fucking brilliant. I'm doing that. So learning from my friends. And my friends are growing as well. We're all experimenting and doing other things nowadays.
Wow. What advice would you give to someone in their 20s who's just coming out today and feeling overwhelmed and confused?
I give this advice every time. It's never taken, ever taken. Slow down. Slow down. It's a lifetime. It's not a race. It's not even a marathon. Leather BDSM is a culture, and you learn the culture over a long period of time. And I'm not talking a year or two. I'm talking a lifetime here. So slow down and enjoy every moment, and then don't enjoy some of the moments because some things are going to happen that are not going to be good things, and you'll learn from those things, whether they're racial, whether they're physical, verbal. We're all going to have these experiences that are awful experiences that we don't want to have again, and so we don't. But unless you have it, you don't know that you don't want to do that again.
Right.
So, allow these experiences to happen, and just take your time, and don't learn from the internet. Learn from people. Don't play with the hot guy. Play with the guy who has the most experience. Because if you play with the guy who has the most experience, then your bar is going to be set very, very high. The first guy to single tail me, I stalked him for years, poor thing. And he finally single tailed me, and it was the experience that I wanted. But I knew he was one of the best in the world. He had that reputation, and I knew this, and I had seen him play. So by the time I played with him, and he single tailed me, my bar.
What's single tail?
A single whip, like a bull whip. So my bar is set very, very high because the first guy to do me was Albert Shutt, who's no longer here anymore. And so I think that, when we play with those people and we set our bars high, then we have the experiences that we know are there that we want. If I just go with the hot guy and have him do me, it's like, well, okay, that wasn't great, but he was hot, but it wasn't great. I'm gonna have the great experiences.
Okay.
My bars are set high.
So I think you're the hot guy, and you have experience.
Well, thank you, but yeah.
Okay. So this hot guy is okay. Do you have a master now?
I don't.
Is that something you miss?
I don't, because I think for me, it's all been a journey. And there was a time when I wanted and needed a master, and I had that, and now I'm someone else. And I think because I was a sub for the first 50 years of my life, that makes me a good dom now. I have the experience of, I know what this is like. I know what it's like to not be wanted as a sub. I know what it's like to be held as a sub. I know what all these things feel like. And I want to be that for any man that is my sub now. I want to take all those lessons that I learned for the first 50 years and apply them and know how they're feeling. And, I tell people all the time, don't flog anyone until you've been flogged. And I use flogging as, it's just general. But unless I have that experience, I don't know what that feels like. So I don't want to do something to someone that I don't know what it feels like. So now as a dom, I know what it feels like to be a sub. So I want to be a dom because I want those subs to have the experience that they deserve. And from a dom who knows what those experiences are and can be. So, that's how I move through the world now. It's like when I meet someone that's a sub, and for my sub, I want them to feel loved and that feel wanted and know that they gave me them and that I appreciate it and I love them for it.
Beautiful. Are you anyone's master?
I'm a dog now. I would say, because my little fucker, he's not a slave, so
Okay.
I can't say I'm his master. But we can play with all of those terms.
Okay.
In a scene, I could be a master, a daddy, all of them, in one scene because, it depends on our mood.
Wow.
So I can play all those roles and he can play all those roles.
Beautiful.
And so I mentioned polyamory before. I believe that people have various people in their lives to mean certain things. And with my general friends, we have sex parties. Race always says, we play with our friends because we trust our friends. So we play with our friends. And then, my sub, he's my primary sub. But there are other men in my life who play other roles. I have a man I call my son. He plays that role for me. I have another man who calls me master. I'm not his master technically, but he calls me that. And I treat him that way. So, there are other people in my life as well. But, I have one primary sub.
Beautiful. I really enjoy talking with you.
I know I talk a lot. I didn't realize I talk so much.
No, that's wonderful. Please don't apologize. No, because what I really get is just the power of play and being open and curious and listening to your intuition. Sometimes doing what you do, even if no one else is doing it, but just like listening and growing and learning.
Yeah.
And that never has to stop. The play, the growth, learning. That never has to stop.
Never.
And, I'm always just thinking about ways that we can age up in a way that's celebratory and empowering and really about connection and fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you showed that. You're role modeling that in so many ways. Yeah. If you could go back to that 8th grader who had found out he didn't get invited, he couldn't go to the party, if you could go back and say something to him, what would that be?
Oh, I would say, welcome to life. Life is full of disappointments and your skin color is going to come up the rest of your life. You can't forget that. And you can't be so comfortable with who you are that you think that you belong in a certain group when you really don't. I think, we have to look at the reality of the situation. I will never be white, and I have to know that and know that my experiences with other white people are going to be very different than my experiences with other Black people. And it's okay. I will do fine. I don't have to go to that party. I don't have to do these things because my life is going to move far anyway. So, it hurt when it happened. It was disappointing. Me and some of those people are still friends. Oh yeah, I have friends from kindergarten.
Wow.
Believe me or not. And
do they know that you had that experience or how painful?
Oh, the people in that school know because I brought it up to them in a Zoom call during the pandemic. Oh. I reminded everyone that I wasn't at your 8th grade graduation party, and most of you didn't notice I wasn't there. That was my message to them.
Did anyone say, oh, wait, we did notice, or we're so sorry?
Well, I know a couple of people who did notice because I had some very close friends, and they, at the time, were like, oh, you go to the party? And I just thought, yeah, no, I didn't go. I didn't want to get into it. But they knew. But, I did bring it up. And I think that by acknowledging that and making that okay, because I did okay.
Yeah. So you would say to that 8th grader,
you'll be fine. You'll be fine. This is life. As a 4-year-old, you were told that you couldn't drink out of a certain water faucet. In the 8th grade, you're told you can't go to this party. And that's going to happen throughout my life. I will have restrictions. There will be things that I want to do that I can't, but then there are also things that I can't do. And I'm going to do those things.
Beautiful. Thank you, Graylin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, here's more good news for people watching this. If you want to learn more about Graylin, see his opinions, see his point of view, there's a wonderful show where you get to do this. You're sort of like the queer, the gay view is the old guard Cigar Salon, Old Guard Cigar Salon. The link is right down there. It is on YouTube. It is fun and it's festive, and you get to see more of Graylin and, well, a little bit less of you than you're seeing here.
Yeah.
But it's you and
Grace
and
Christopher
and
Weston.
Can't remember the other.
The Cigar Pig.
The Cigar Pig.
Cigar Pig.
Talking about these issues, talking about boundaries, about aging, about sex, about culture, about changes. You take on pretty much every subject.
We do. Well, it's kind of a funny podcast because it originated as, we just sitting around talking. And then eventually it's like, well, maybe we should do a podcast and talk about these things. And then it grew. But realistically, we sit around and talk like that all the time, 2 or 3 times a week. We did it last Tuesday. We were at the Pig's house and Christopher was there and Ray's was there. And again, we just sit around with our cigars and we think, oh no, we should save this and make it a topic for the show.
When we can find a tub, or I would love to join you guys. And
that would be fun.
I have never had a cigar. I know, it's crazy.
Well, not really.
But if we're outside in a tub, we could try it.
Yeah, we'll find a hot tub.
Yeah.
And we'll get you to smoke a cigar.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
Coming soon.
Yes.
All right. So also, if people want to follow you, where else would you like people to go? If they want to see more of your work or your life or your thoughts?
Well, I only do the podcast.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram and all that stuff. But I was just in the latest issue of Drummer Magazine, the 50th anniversary issue.
Wow.
This is actually my 3rd time being in Drummer Magazine. I was the first Black man on the cover of Drummer, because I was the first Black Mr. Drummer.
In 93.
Yeah. Actually, I'm the only Black Mr. Drummer. So
to this day?
To this day. There's never been a Black one.
Okay.
I know, right? Yeah, I don't really like that. But I'm in this issue, which is the 50th anniversary, and I love this issue because I feel like I'm the most me from any photo shoot I've ever done. And most of my photo shoots, I'm, in leather, I'm doing the Leatherman thing, doing the whole sexy thing. And then this photo shoot, I decided I didn't want to do any of that. I want to just relax and be me. And there's an interview, and, I'm barefoot, I'm in jeans, I'm just hanging out, and it feels sexy to me because I'm not trying to be sexy. I'm just kind of sitting around, and I love that. So this issue of Drummer, the 50th anniversary.
Okay, I will find the link and put it down there. It might be behind a paywall, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's definitely
like a
worth
great interview.
it. Yeah, and you think 50 years of Drummer Magazine, and that's where I started. That's what taught me that the culture was Drummer Magazine.
Wow. All right. Thank you. So catch Graylin, look at the links, and if you like this show, subscribe. There's almost 200 episodes of people who are sharing about their experiences and their journeys and ways that they have learned lessons and ways that they're trying to make our culture a happier, healthier place.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching Dumb Talks, everybody. Enjoy.
Bye.